Welcome to Revolution Against Evolution. I'm your host, Doug Sharp.
Your co-host, Rich Geary, here as well. And we have Derek and Jeff here today. And it's kind of exciting to get two guests, Doug.
Yeah, it is. And these two guys traveled with us to Naperville, Illinois, to a conference, a creation conference, and it was actually quite a bit bigger than what I expected to be. We had Josh McDowell as the main speaker, but we recorded the sessions that our friend Helmut Welk had put together. The one was on the 8 men controversy, and the other one had to do with the intelligent design and atheism. And so both of those were excellent sessions. You'll see those as episodes in our TV show. We've already produced 2 of those, 2 out of the one. I made one of the videos on the 8 men. One had all the other fossils explained, and then the second was about Lucy, the Lucy fossil. And so that's what we did. Today's show is going to be about the big lie and how it should be easy to detect, but sometimes it just kind of gets by us, doesn't it? And there's a number of things that was brought out in this conference that shows how these different things have affected the culture, and it has caused people to believe in evolution, even though evidence that was brought out that caused people to believe in evolution was later debunked. And so we're going to talk about some of these things and some examples of where we find these big, huge lies being manifest in our society. It's sort of like this when I was years ago, my dad told a story about he was working over at Myers, and he said that there was a couple of guys who went into the sporting goods section, and they carried out a canoe. Well, they were right in front of everybody. They're carrying this canoe, and they were actually stealing it. But it was right in front of everybody, and they could see that this was happening. But everybody assumed, well, they must know what they're doing, and so they just let them carry it out.
Well, they did know what they were doing. They were robbing them blind,
Now it's a flat screen.
Now it's a flat screen.
Yeah. So anyway, so Derek, Jeff, what did you guys? I mean, was there one or two big takeaways from the conference that you guys actually had? I mean, because there was a lot of breakout sessions, and you couldn't see everything. So and I know Doug wants to get to certain basic. There's so many of these lies, Doug.
Right.
But we're going to point out just a few of them. But I just wanted to know if there's any takeaways that you guys came out of the conference that was anything maybe new or something that was interesting or something to confirm something that you already thought about. Derek,
I like the Helmut's presentation of the Lucy fossils. I'm more, I guess my research that I do is more on the mathematics, physics side, maybe.
Right.
I have quite a bit of education biology also, but having had gone to university relatively recently, within the past 20 years, they were still trying to pass off these lies of Piltdown Man and all these different
Piltdown Man?
Yeah, of all these different various missing links is what I call them.
Okay.
And trying to put off the idea that there is a missing link, and I've never been convinced of that. But I wasn't necessarily, I don't really follow those as much as I follow other things. And I was impressed with how succinctly he was able to show that there are fossils of human beings and there's fossils of chimpanzees.
Right? Yeah.
Right.
Nothing else is there. And that's what I took away from it. I was only able to see 1.5 presentations of all the presentations that were there.
I know.
Both Helmut's presentations. I saw all of the first one, which I thought he did an excellent job with what we're talking about here. And then half of the second one, which is up my alley with the Miller-Urey.
We'll talk about
that later.
Yeah.
But that's what I liked for the most
Yeah,
part.
Jeff, what about you?
I guess it was the first presentation, like you were talking about with Lucy. What amazed me is how persistent the deception is and how it's tolerated in the mainstream scientific community. I'm just amazed. I mean, you look at a textbook, for example, from the 80s or whatever, and it still has Haeckel's embryos in it. And that was proven to be a fraud how long ago?
100 years ago.
And what really got me was the Lucy feat. I'd seen a presentation from someone else, Dr. Menton, with Answers in Genesis once before, but seeing it presented by Helmut on stage there, and sort of in person and really listening to the presentation, and it struck me, wow, they put human feet on a Lucy statue, or on a Lucy.
It's a reconstruction,
and then they have also found other Australopithecine.
Yeah, easy for you to say.
Yeah, exactly. Specimens in the fossil record, and they have the feet for those, and they're monkey feet, yet they continue to put the human feet on Lucy, and it's just like, no one calls them on it. No one says anything.
And so somebody actually called upon him and said that the person that actually is in charge of the exhibit, why you still have this, and and why don't you change it? And they said, oh, that would give the wrong impression.
Of course.
See, this is what, now you're talking about the big lie.
This is the big lie.
When you know better, see, when you're ignorant, okay, I may castigate you a little bit for being ignorant, but when you're willfully ignorant, then it's a lie. It's malicious. You talked about, so let's go here. What are some of the big lies? We're not going to be able to touch, there's so many of them, okay? But you guys touched on 2 or 3 of them already. Lucy, what else did you touch on?
Well, I was going to talk about 4 of them.
Yeah.
The Lucy was one of them, the ape-man controversy. Also a little bit of the deep time deception, and the idea that carbon-14 proves millions of years.
Right.
Then there was one that
Miller-Urey.
The Miller-Urey was the third one, and then the 4th one is this thing I just found on 23andMe. This is the thing that says same-sex sexual behavior partially influenced by genetics. And the title says what they want to believe, and yet the research inside of it says something different. And so this is a typical thing. It's a bait and switch. It baits you with this big lie, and then it goes in, when you get down to the bottom of it, you look through this, and that's not what this research says at all.
In fact, it seems to say
exactly right.
It says the exact opposite of what the headline says. This happens a lot, which is pretty. It's disturbing, but on the other hand, part of me understands it, because I think a lot of these people are their father, the devil, who's the father of liars. Okay, and the point of it is they bald-facedly lie. You talked about the Piltdown Man. I said that was disproved in 1953 from Dawson and Thierry Chardin. Talked about it in 1912. It was a Piltdown Man came in and had a bad jaw. It was badly filed, stained. It was a bad
a monkey jaw and a human skull cap.
The mandibles were destroyed. 40 years.
40 years.
40 years. Okay. What gets me is you said in the 80s they were still. That's hard. I mean, man, that's hard to believe. But my point of it is, and when we go through all these lies, we're going to go a little bit about them. Is the fact that it's not that there's a lie. It's not that they make a mistake. It's that they persist on it even after knowing it's a lie.
That's right, yeah.
Well, this is what gets me, because what you said, Doug, was so good, and I'll let you get in there, but the idea, they give the wrong impression. In other words, an anti-evolution one. Right. This is what really, they want the lie of evolution so badly, they will lie to get it. This is what really, it's unconscionable, but then why should we be you know, if they think you come out of monkey slime or whatever, if you come out of primordial slime or whatever, then anything, the end justifies the means. It doesn't really matter.
And, well, I guess two things. First, on the 23andMe quote that you pointed to, a lot of times, just like right now, our church denomination is wrestling, quote unquote, with the same-sex marriage issue and the homosexuality issue, and now they're going to be coming out with a report in 2 years. And the results of that report will be, you know, it'll kind of determine the direction of and whether or not there's a split and all this kind of stuff. Well, I read a little article in our denominational newsletter, a magazine, and it said they were referring us to two books. Both of them are pro-homosexual by Christians, and they refer to the research, and they say, yes, there's pretty much a genetic predisposition to homosexuality. And what it seems like to me is they're basing their conclusions on the headline instead of the actual research. That's one thing. And then
they're not looking at
it. I was going to say, but go ahead.
Oh, no, I know, that's very good, but the thing what I was getting at is, more importantly even than all that, I don't really care if it's genetic, because the scripture tells me very clearly that all of us are predisposed to sin because of the fall of man. In other words, there may be a genetic, I don't believe there is one, but I'm saying even if there was, there's no excuse.
Yeah.
The reality is it says, look, it doesn't matter whether it's genetic or not. You come with bait and switch, Doug. Mm-hmm. It's really, that's what it is. It's genetic, therefore it's okay. No, it's not.
Right.
We are genetically predisposed to sin. We are liars, deceivers, murderers, all of us, and we don't like to hear that about ourselves because we're arrogant. But the fact of the matter is that's who we are by the grace of God. He gives us ways around it. So even if it was genetic, which, by the way, the headlines are opposite of what the
let's see, here's what it says.
Read it.
The researchers in the United States, the Netherlands, United Kingdom, and Australia did not find any patterns among the genetic variants that could be used to meaningfully predict or identify a person's sexual orientation or behavior.
Okay.
So it says, no, we didn't find anything. But it contradicts the headline.
Well,
The headline tells you what they want to believe.
Yeah,
and they want a justification that they can use when they stand before God to explain why they were the way they were. But then they can blame God that God made me this way, and so that's why I behaved in this manner.
Yeah, right. God made a mistake.
God made a
Therefore,
mistake.
if God made a mistake, how is it that I would be held liable for that?
Yeah.
How can I do anything about it? Yeah. What I don't like about this type of research is that a trend that I'm seeing in society is they want to absolve people of responsibility for everything in their lives.
Exactly right.
So they don't have to take responsibility for their sexual behavior or anything else that they do. And this is just another example.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Miller-Urey experiment for this example. That was something that had me enamored back when I was in 11th grade, and I devised an experiment to see if I could take the amino acids that Mr. Miller produced in his lab and to see if I could combine them together to form peptides, to form see what would happen, and I zonked these amino acids and tried to get them to combine. Well, it didn't take me too long to find out that the chemistry of that wasn't going to allow me to do it. For all these years since that time, 1967 was when I was doing this experiment, and so I kept combing the literature to see if anyone's ever come up with a solution to this, and they've offered prizes of millions of dollars for somebody who would actually give evolution 2.0 the explanation for how the chemistry of life actually ended up the way it is.
Well, Doug, didn't they have a reducing atmosphere, and it was supposed to be a methane, ammonia type of an atmosphere, which because oxygen, which all life needs, is a destructive force if you're not living.
Yeah, it's poison.
It's poison.
Actual poison.
So they have to have methane pneumonia. They postulated that. That's what Miller-Urey did. And of course, now since then we've discovered, Doug, don't let your geology mess up your theology. The earliest rocks, even based on their thing, are impregnated with oxygen. So that really messes that whole thing up. But the idea is that oxygen suddenly, spontaneously, it was reducing, then suddenly it became oxygen as you became alive at the same time. It's an unbelievable
Yeah.
scenario.
Yeah, the
That
oxygenation event or something like that.
yeah, that's what it was. The oxygenation event. When I heard that, I went, what the heck? I've never...
And it's the great.
Yeah, the
It's
great.
the
The great
The
oxygenation event.
G-O.
Yeah, the GOE,
The
yeah.
great, oh yeah, it's great, that's right, it's miraculous, really, when you
Yeah,
think
it's
about
one
it.
of those lies that's been, I think, in some schools probably still perpetuated that this took place. That the Earth in its early stages had what's called an anaerobic environment.
Right.
Meaning no oxygen, but life was still taking place, but through other chemical processes. So that's one lie. Another lie is that, okay, well, this Miller-Urey experiment with its spark, you spark this discharge in this
Right.
test tube, basically, to oversimplify it, but not too an awful lot, is that amino acids, the building blocks of life, were made, right? But it's true that some amino acids were made, but these were the very, very small compounds called nucleobases, which are very, very, very small, and they're made with very quickly. Not even all of them, but some of them are made very quickly in this reaction. And these are small. They're on the order of less than or around 100 AMU, which is an atomic mass unit. Once
Yeah.
again.
There you go. We got to get his math.
Or Daltons.
Yeah.
And I actually looked it up. A Dalton or an AMU is actually figured as exactly 1/12 of a carbon atom's atomic mass, because that's an exact atomic mass of 12.
Now, do they?
So let me just continue my thought.
Yeah.
Is that these very, very small nucleobases, they are amino acids, but they're not the nucleotides which have to combine to form proteins,
Well, the nucleotides are combined to perform DNA,
the DNA.
but the amino acids, the small amino acids, alanine and glycine, those are fairly easy to make,
Right.
And you would expect that in a reaction like that, you'd get these little ones.
Less than 100 or on the end,
Yeah,
order
but
of 100.
the tryptophan and tyrosine and these more complex ones, histidine and some of these proline, those amino acids are kind of difficult to make in the lab.
So part of the lie is that since we have the amino acids, some other way all this stuff combines together in some other chemical reaction. When the reality is there's several steps that are involved. Each step is like a huge statistical chasm.
Yeah.
They have to go
Yeah.
through.
And
there's one after another of these huge statistical magical feats that have to happen to get to the next complexity and not even get to the point where we're starting to make a polymer, which is your either peptides or your proteins or your DNA or RNA.
How about the left-handed and right-handed?
Now that right there, and I'm actually writing a paper on this right now. That I can't remember the researcher's name, but that is regarded as the highest example of order in the universe. Is that the left-hand chirality of life organisms?
Yeah.
And that is the highest form of order, because that is just outrageously, beautiful, wonderful, and amazing.
But it makes no sense with natural electric processes.
And one
Improbable.
yeah, improbable. It's improbable beyond imagination that could ever happen for even one small strand of DNA that you're trying to make, one small polymer. It's still astronomically.
Yeah.
They were given, let me see what I got here, just to make an amino acid, 1 in 10 to the 130th power. To make a cell, 1 in 10 to the 40,000th power. So I've given kind of a down-to-earth, excuse the pun, example of, this is what I call max Earth, which is, max Earth means what can be done on the surface of the Earth according to all the constraints. So, okay, so we're constrained to the size of the Earth. Well, how big is the surface of the Earth? And we're constrained to how many things could possibly happen on the surface of the Earth in 4.6 billion years. So I'll do this really quickly. I'm not going to say all the numbers. Basically,
We got two other kids to talk about.
if you count the number of atoms that are on the surface of the Earth, and you have all those points on the surface of the Earth as small test tubes with a life experiment going on it. And in each test tube, there is what's called Planck's time, number of experiments happening, which is the shortest amount of time that exists. I talked about it on just a visual.
Yep.
So if reactions in this one little test tube among all these other test tubes that are one atom apart along the surface of the Earth, if all those are going at one time and all simultaneously, and they're all going over 4.6 billion years, you're still at a 1 to the 91st power, or 10 to the 91st power. Okay, so what that means is 10 to the 91st power is still less than 10 to the 130th power, which is what you need for an amino acid. And it's still less than 2 to the 300th power, what you would need to make a molecule of, a proteogenic molecule of 300 DA, or Daltons, and up. And here's, I'll end with this here. ATP, which is adenosine triphosphate, which is absolutely necessary for light processing.
Right, yeah.
It helps exchange energy as the energy processes within a cell, energizes the cell. That is 507 Daltons. So we're talking about something that is just by itself, just that one example, is out of the realm of possibility to make using just random processes. If you have every spot on the Earth where there's an atom on the surface of the Earth going at Planck's time speed for 4.6 billion years.
Well, here's a lie.
So that's what I call max Earth. It's impossible.
Here's the lie, is that you have the people at NASA sending up rockets into space to search for life on other planets. And a lot of people's research grant money is dependent upon them doing this search for life on other planets. And their idea is they'll go out to the outer, like the Cassini mission that went out to Saturn. And they flew by Enceladus and the Titan, these moons of Saturn, and their idea was that they're going to detect some water out there that is where it's possible for them to form life. And what you're saying here is that their mission is futile, because they're never going to be able to find it. They keep trying to find water on Mars, and digging into the...
Water's as destructive as oxygen. I mean, it doesn't. I mean, the thing is, water is not going to guarantee life. Water prevents life.
I thought water contains oxygen.
Well, it does, but yeah. But I'm saying, but it's got hydrogen as well. It's like, but.
All right, well, it's anatomy of the peptide bond.
Yeah, well, whatever.
The soup would have been water, the early oceans. You read about that in every textbook. How life started.
And water
in the
will
oceans.
destroy anything from forming. It will.
Duh.
Yeah.
I wish our kids would learn that kind of thing in school. It'd be great if they would actually learn something like that.
Yeah.
Wow, oxygen destroys, and so does water. And so how are you going to get life started when it depends on things holding together when it's going to be dissolved?
Even living things, we're trying to...
really great if our teachers would
Trying
teach
to get
that
rid of
kind
free
thing.
radicals,
No.
things like that.
Parents, get to work.
Hydrophobic reactions.
I'm going to...
Let's go back to the...
I'm going to talk a little bit about this one.
Two, right?
Yeah.
The deep time deception, which is carbon-14, it talks about the idea of that carbon-14 equals millions of years. And it is very easy for somebody to actually refute that because the half-life of carbon-14 is 5,730 years. And so if you're going to have something more than 10 half-lives, which would be about 50,000 years, you're not going to have enough carbon-14 to detect anything in a sample. And now the amount of sample of carbon-14 that we would find in even a young sample would be one atom in about a trillion atoms of carbon-12. And so the proportion of carbon-14 that you're going to find in a sample that's young, the way the carbon-14 is formed in the atmosphere, and it causes it's when cosmic rays hit the nitrogen atom, it knocks them. It causes a nuclear reaction that causes it to turn to carbon-14. And so it has this half-life, and this carbon-14 is ingested into the plant material, which is eaten by other things. But the evolutionists don't think to date coal or diamonds or limestone with the carbon-14 dating, because those are supposed to be too old for carbon-14 to have any measurable carbon-14.
But haven't some creationists tested diamonds, coal?
Exactly.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
And what did they find?
They found the carbon-14.
Yeah. See,
So those are young, the coal is young, diamonds are young, limestone is young,
Soft
and so it fits in very
yeah, they haven't
nicely.
tested dinosaur, I mean, unfossilized material, they're finding carbon-14.
Oh, yeah.
And the point of it is, your prejudice allows you what you can see. Since they believe they're millions of years old, they didn't expect to find any, but we're finding it.
And you mentioned grant money. Grant money, I think, is, and that's the thing I was going to mention earlier, which I forgot, but now it comes back to me. When you mentioned the grant money, why go against the prevailing paradigm when it's going to make your paycheck?
Well, show me the money, I know.
Exactly.
But the point of it is so what you're saying, Doug, even if the worst case scenario, carbon-14 does not prove millions of years. You have to go to other dating methods for that reason. We don't have time for that to deal with that on this show. But carbon-14 is no good for millions of years.
Right.
But more importantly, the dates we're finding is showing it's in animals that are supposedly millions of years old, and fossils and rocks, and so it kind of begs the question. It is a young Earth out there. But the lie is, like I say, when I saw Eugenie Scott, she was on the National Science Education, I can't remember the thing, she was interviewing with Miller-Urey King and talking about millions of years and carbon-14 and show. I said she was either lying or she's woefully ignorant.
Well, she meant radiometric, obviously.
She went radiometric, but she said carbon-14 because that's a hot button.
Oh, yeah.
Most people, everyone knows about carbon-14. So that's a hot button. I just did it on purpose, but that's another thing.
Well, we'll see you next time on Revolution Against Evolution. We hope you enjoyed our show.